Hey everyone, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's Watchmen Season 1, maybe only season, review. So HBO, their 9-episode arc of Watchmen. I'm Robert. This is also Robert.
Yeah.
So you've got two Roberts. Aaron's on the camera and he still doesn't know shit about this, so we're about to.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. I guess the initial thing, and first off, full spoilers. So we are just going to spoil right from the get-go. So if you haven't seen the season, or you're only partway through, I would go ahead and just, tab the video, save it for later, watch it later. But we're spoiling everything. So we haven't really talked about this. What did you think of the show?
I loved it, honestly. I was in from the first episode.
Yeah.
It was a little dark, the first episode, especially with the farm setting.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who's a cow lover, and I had to let her warn her, hey, if you're gonna watch this, let me know so I can warn you.
Yeah.
Don't watch this part. That was pretty gruesome. It was also cool to see though.
Yeah.
But that drew me in, and then it was probably the third episode, I think it is, where Agent Laurie is telling jokes to Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was just an amazingly directed episode, and I just loved it from the get-go. It was just fast-paced, and it was exactly what I wanted from the series.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't in right away. It took me a few episodes. I think the episode that really hooked me was episode 5, which was the one that focused on Tim Blake Nelson's character, Mirror Guy, as she keeps calling him in the show, but Looking Glass.
Looking Glass is his name, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that episode. That kind of you got his backstory and you heard all about kind of how he became who he was.
Yeah.
So that was
the mask.
Yeah, that was the episode that really hooked me, and I think I really, that was the peak for me. I think after that, I wasn't, I really liked the next episode, which I think is the one where Angela, played by Regina King, was in going through the past of her grandfather's memories.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really cool episode too. But then as soon as it started focusing on Dr. Manhattan, I didn't like it as much.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Obviously you feel a little bit differently, so.
Yeah, the episode God Walked Into a Bar.
Yeah.
Angela was
A-Bar.
Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, because her last name is A-Bar. So yeah. A little pun for you.
They were in the bar, and Dr. Manhattan introduced himself, and I loved the whole time aspect of it.
That was a really cool way to tell the story.
Yeah.
And it harkened back to a lot of things in the comic that is told through very different time, different time ways. So yeah, I thought it was very well done. I don't want to mean to say that, the show wasn't well done. There were aspects of it, I felt like Dr. Manhattan's character wasn't the same one from the comic.
Okay.
And maybe that just is me, but it just felt like, that's not really the same character. And for a character who's supposed to experience all time simultaneously, I would expect him to be the same character the whole time.
I guess that makes sense. A little bit more. He's a little bit more, less personality, I guess it would have been.
I don't know. He was weird.
Yeah.
But he's always been weird.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a different flavor of weird for me.
Okay.
That I just didn't like. I don't know. I felt like because of the way he experienced his time, it's really weird to have a character set in this time frame interacting with these people and doing all this, while also apparently everything that's happens in the comic is also going on.
Yeah.
It's just it feels like there should, from, obviously they couldn't do it because they didn't, Alan Moore didn't have anything to do with this series. This isn't his plan, but it's okay, even though those events happened 35 years ago, for a character that's supposed to experience them all simultaneously, you would think in the comic, somebody like Angela, who is hugely important in his life, would actually matter, but obviously she doesn't exist in the comic.
Yeah.
So it felt weird to me.
Okay.
Just because as that character, I would expect, I don't know, it's just I didn't expect him to play as big of a role as he did.
Okay.
And the fact that he did, there were just some things I didn't care for.
It did take a long time to really finally learn who Dr. Manhattan was and where he was and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it was like maybe the 6th episode of the season when you finally realized that Dr. Manhattan is the plot. Like,
yeah, where you finally, and I mean that's obviously stuff they've been seeding from the beginning with like the lithium batteries and different things. I mean that's kind of the MacGuffin of the first episode, and then it's never brought up again. I think until the final episode, where you get your great villain monologue, which again is great because in the first Watchmen, you get the villain monologue, except in that comic the villain has already pulled off his scheme when he gives off his monologue, so he was a smarter villain than the ones in this movie that were like, we're gonna monologue before it happens.
Very true.
Shouldn't have done that. Yeah. But I will say I did like the series overall. I think I didn't love it, and I think that is mainly because of how much I love the comic. Yeah. And the characters that were turned, like Dr. Manhattan. I didn't really care for him. Ozymandias, I felt was, again, I actually thought they really captured his character really well. Yeah. Like, I was like, that is the same character from the comic. But I think just his whole storyline was so weird.
It was confusing at first.
It was incredibly, and also just like, I didn't, even knowing the final, like where it led to, I still feel like almost all of it was filler. Like I still don't understand like why he was doing any of it. Like it didn't matter. It was just to fill the time. Like he literally says that. He's just, I had time to waste.
Yeah, I can understand that, but like you got to remember what Dr. Manhattan played a role in sending him over there. Sure. Right? So he would have known that he would have returned just in time to save the world again. Yeah, and I totally, like, I get it. I understand, what part he had to play at the end. Yeah. I just, everything that led up to it, I was like, like the whole, like, play that he put on, or, going through the trial and all that stuff. It was like, this was all just to fill time. Yeah. And so, for people that haven't seen it or ready to get spoiled, the Ozymandias role takes place over 7 years, right? Or 8 years? Yeah, I think it's... Every time you see him, it jumps a year. Right, exactly. Every scene, and he's in 8 of the 9 episodes, because he doesn't make an appearance, I think, in the one where she goes to the past. So yeah, it's 8 different times we get introduced to him, and every time it's a different year. But the last one is actually like a multi-year time jump. Okay. Because I think he comes back to Earth in 2017. That's right. Yeah. And then he's cryo-frozen. Right. He's literally been carbonated, if you will, except it's gold. He's just he's a statue for like 2 years. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's. Yeah, I mean, he literally got pushed in the carbonite chamber, and they're like. Yeah. And again, I think it was interesting the way that the villain of the show, was kind of revealed. Obviously, we have, the white supremacists on one side who all get completely wiped out, which no one's crying over that. and then you had, Lady True kind of coming in as that secondary villain. Yeah. Again, with the plot of this is the only way I can do this so that Dr. Manhattan doesn't see me coming. And it was like, okay, again, very clever, and having her be, a daughter of Ozymandias, that, again, smartest person, smartest woman in the world, and now is, again, trying to, he was trying to save the world in his way, in the comic, and in her way, she's going, oh, I'm going to save the world in my way. And you're like, yeah, I think you're just going to be an evil overlord. Pretty much. Like, what do you expect from it? Like, Dr. Manhattan, he became Dr. Manhattan, and then, like, he knew the answers to everything immediately. Like, right. He did what he did because he knew everything. Like, what makes her think that she's going to be different than... Well, yeah, and it's really interesting because, obviously, that's a character who didn't know what he was signing up for. Yeah. In the comic, he just becomes Dr. Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in this series, we have characters that are actively trying to become Dr. Manhattan. They're actively trying to... gain that power. And I think what's really cool and what they did capture well about Dr. Manhattan is even in the comic, he's really more of a passive character. He lets things happen around him. He doesn't drive the action. He doesn't interfere. And that's kind of, it feels very, they give you a little backstory for John Osterman in the show. And it feels like they built him to be kind of a passive character even before it happened, right? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of makes sense, is that
the way he experiences everything is it's already happened, so I can't change it.
Yeah.
And so it would be interesting to see if they go the route of a character that, has those powers and goes, maybe I have seen it, but I want to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they kind of play on that with the very end of episode 8 leading into the finale with, he is going, it's already happened, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And Angela is saying, we can prevent it, we can stop it, we just have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And, her going out there, and then of course it still happens because he knows it will. So that was kind of cool to see that. And one of the moments that I loved from the finale was the moment where he's in the cage and he's about to die. And he sends the other characters away, but not Angela. He leaves her there, and he says to her, I don't want to be alone when I die. And that really, for me, that was really cool because it tied into the comic where when he's first in the chamber as John, and he's about to become Dr. Manhattan, and Janie can't watch, and she runs away. And so in that moment, he's about to die. Everybody thinks he's about to die, and she can't be there with him. And so the fact that they kind of brought that full circle, and it's I want someone to be here when I die, and that he asked for it, and Angela was like, yes, I'm going to be here when that happens. I really thought that was cool.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but that is really cool.
It's interesting.
Someone so cold and heartless because of who he is, just has that much emotion that he has fear of dying alone.
Well, and it's true, and I think that, again, is one of the aspects of his character that they did get right, is that even in the comic, he, love matters to him.
Yeah.
That's, the reason he, abandons mankind is because, Laurie leaves him, and he even, there's that great line where he says, when you left me, I left Earth. And you're like, okay, that's a pretty baller line. That shows you that he cares.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was cool that they built that love story again, that love connection. And overall, the overall story for me, again, I think one of my big problems with the show, and it's a different medium than a comic, so I get it, is it felt like, this was clearly a show that was Angela's show. Mm-hmm. Right? She is the main character. She's driving everything. Yeah. And I think part of why I love Watchmen, the comic, is there is no main character. Yeah. It's all of them. And so I think maybe I was expecting that. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that we got so little of some of those new characters like Looking Glass, who I really liked,
he is really good.
Or Red Scare, who I was like, man, this is an interesting character. We should explore this.
Yeah. Or
Pirate Jenny, who literally gets almost nothing to do, and I was like, but I want to know about her. Yeah. So I think that was part of my problem, is that I wanted more of those other characters. Mm-hmm. I think that was part of why I didn't necessarily love it. Yeah. So I don't know. How did you feel about all of the new characters?
I mean, I really like Looking Glass as well. He was a really interesting character. Even his detective persona as Looking Glass.
Yeah.
Those scenes where he was in those chambers were just really cool to watch.
In the pod, that was cool. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as for the other characters, I feel like they're trying to give it an action comic feel, maybe, that they've got background characters that are just there, right? Instead of just main characters. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what it is, because that's how it kind of felt to me. They're just filler in the background for it to say a couple lines every now and then, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was part of why I checked out when I did. Like I said, that episode that hooked me was Looking Glass's episode.
Yeah.
And then he did not show up again until the finale.
Yeah, that's right.
It was like, wait, I want more Looking Glass. You just hooked me in. Yeah. And even in the finale, he had really not much to do. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of I think I was just more disappointed by some of the threads that didn't get followed up on, Lube Man. We mentioned that out there. It's Lube Man who shows up for one episode in one scene, and then you never see him again. Now they did explain who that character was
on the website.
Yeah, on HBO's companion website. So that was the junior FBI agent that was there. Yeah. So which I kind of knew, because immediately after that scene where he escapes through the sewer, it cuts to immediately a scene in the police station with Laurie and him, and you're like, that looks exactly like the guy that was Lube Man.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
And plus he had a mask for no reasons, unless he just likes sleeping with a mask on. Sleeping with other women, I guess.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked much about Laurie. So of the characters that are from the original comic that return, we talked about Dr. Manhattan, and we've talked about Ozymandias. But yeah, the third character that returns is Laurie. She's going by Blake now, which is her father's last name. So,
Silk Spectre 2.
Correct. So was Laurie, Jupiter / Jaspesic, depending on, who was calling her by her last name, but has now taken her father's last name of Blake, and is basically now an FBI agent on the anti-vigilante crime, task force, which they kind of explained. She was a vigilante up until the mid '90s, and her and Night Owl got caught, and she took a deal basically to work for the FBI. Night Owl's in prison. We do not see him at any point during the series.
They talk about him, we don't see him.
Yeah. So that character comes in as the FBI agent trying to solve the mystery in episode 3. How did you think they handled her character?
It was interesting at first. I didn't recognize who it was at first. I mean, the first opening scene with her in it, where she takes down the fake Batman in the middle of the bank.
That was cool.
That was really cool to watch. I mean, then it makes you wonder if Batman can ever work at all. Like, wow.
No, I don't think so.
They just straight stopped him and had 5 moves, But then, like I said, I didn't. It took me a while to recognize who it was, and then if someone made a joke about her being raped by a comedian, I was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
That's when it really clicked for me, and her flipping didn't really make a lot of sense, but in my mind, just because of her original character, but I enjoyed her. She was hardcore. She really drove the plot forward.
Yeah, I think that's my problem too. Is that I thought she was I thought the way they used her character was really cool.
Yeah.
But I was also like, why is this the same character from the comic? It was another one with Dr. Manhattan where I was like, this doesn't feel like the same character that we had before.
Yeah.
And they kind of have a throwaway line in the the last scene that she has where she's like, people change. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know if I'm gonna let you get away with that.
Yeah.
Because she was just a very different character. But in the show, I thought that character, the FBI agent with the vigilante past, was really cool.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of great scenes with her and Angela, like at the graveyard where they're both kind of dropping. Basically she's trying to just intimidate Angela, and Angela's like, "Oh, I'm so scared." I thought that was cool.
I also liked how she handled the other detectives. She just made constant jokes about them.
Oh yeah. Well, she just called him Mirror Guy.
Mirror Guy.
And you could tell it was just pissing him off the whole time.
And she just that was really fun to watch too. Just to watch her get under everyone's skin, just for the hell of it. I think really. Yeah,
she was a really cool character. Again, I think the reason I didn't love the show was because I felt like some of the things didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Building off of the comic. What did make sense and what I really liked was the squid storms.
Yeah.
Because that totally makes sense that you have to keep up the illusion. Otherwise, people will just go, okay, even just 10 years later, they'd be like, okay, we're past it now.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. The first time you watch it, it's like, what the hell? Why they're squids, but you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
To actually learn, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years now. At this point.
Exactly.
That was really fun.
I will say, I talked about Ozymandias and how I felt like his character was built really well from the comic. The one thing that I thought they really messed up, and it was a plot convenience. It was almost like they had to do it so that the end of the series could happen, was him recording his confession. For Robert Redford.
Yeah.
I hated that. I was like, there's no way this character who spent all this time building this illusion would then just record, hey, this is what I did, and I know you're going to be president, and so hopefully you don't totally out the world. I didn't like that. And so then, of course, that becomes the plot device that the 7th Cavalry uses. They know that everything was a hoax. And then, of course, at the very end, you've got Looking Glass and Laurie deciding to bring him in.
Yeah.
Basically, arrest him and saying, here's the evidence, So it was like, it felt very convenient. Like, it was like, we did that so that we could have a plot device. But the world's smartest man, to me, would not record a video confession.
Definitely not.
Even though he is the most egotistical guy in the world that wants the world to know that he saved them.
Yeah.
Like, I bought all of that motivation. That he's like, I feel like the world is ungrateful for what I did for them. I buy all that.
Yeah.
But I don't buy that he would record a confession.
And send it to Robert Redford.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool symbolism and stuff in the show, though. A lot of cool callbacks to the comics. So, overall, again, I thought it was a series that was really good for what it was.
Yeah.
I think, again, the reason I didn't love it was because of my attachment to the comic.
Okay.
But I know I talked to my sister, who has never read the comic, and watched the show, and she's like, I loved it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish that I could love it the same level, but I just think there's certain characters and certain things that I'm like, it doesn't jive with the comic, just to me. But it was really well made, really well acted. I really liked the explanation they gave for Hooded Justice. That's the big twist we haven't talked about yet.
That was great, yeah.
Yeah, so talk about that. What did you feel about it?
I mean, I don't know, man. It was just a great reveal. They turned a know-nothing character from the comics, right, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I mean, he's literally the only character that we never know who he really is.
Yeah.
In any of the backstories, we never found out who Hooded Justice really was. There's some, he might have been this guy, he might have been that guy, but we never get a definitive answer.
Yeah, and in this TV show, they've got a Hooded Justice or TV show that everyone watches.
Correct, yeah, the TV show inside the TV show.
Yeah, pretty much. And this, the great reveal is that Hooded Justice is Angela's
grandfather.
Yeah. Grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And, he uses whiteface.
Right.
To hide that he is a person of color, and that's pretty much what it drives him behind who he is, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the show kicks off with the race riot which is not really even a race riot; it's a race massacre. It's in Tulsa,
the whole town.
Yeah, in 1921, and he is a child when that is happening. So he basically sees his parents and everyone that he's ever known basically killed in front of him.
Yeah.
Then, we see a flashback of him fighting in World War I. Or no, I think it's World War I. Or no, it's his father was fighting in World War I is what it was.
Okay.
So his father was fighting in World War I, and and this is true history. While they were fighting, there were battalions of African Americans who basically were given propaganda by the opposite side saying, America treats you like shit.
Yeah.
Why are you fighting for them? And so, you see that's kind of the through line of this character is then we see in his memory, when he's a cop in the 1930s, he's experiencing basically just racism everywhere.
As there was.
He sees a criminal, commit a crime. He brings him in, and basically they go, "Oh, we'll take care of it. Don't worry." And then 2 days later, he sees that guy out on the street.
Yeah.
And he's and the guy basically mocks him, like, "Oh, you thought I was like, no, and you're just and so it was really interesting to see. Then he basically gets lynched by his fellow cops, and that's where the Hooded Justice kind of imagery comes from. And he has to basically pretend like he's a white guy, because a black guy under a mask being a vigilante in that time, and maybe even nowadays, would be very negatively viewed and would not be viewed as a hero, as a savior. And so to have that be the first vigilante, that now all the other ones who have all been white have built off of, and he inspired them to do all that and to turn that on its head and say, oh, it was actually a black guy and you're now appropriating what he was doing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever and really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he was like the imagery that came out where he was like he was literally wearing the noose that they had tied him up to the tree from his fellow officers actually.
Yeah.
After he had arrested that person.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I mean, there's a lot of I think there's been a lot of speculation about whether there would be a season 2 or not. The creator Damon Lindelof said that he doesn't have a story or an idea for season 2 at this point, but he's open to making it. Obviously, the series leaves it open for continued stories that could be. So do you want more? Or you want more Watchmen?
I think I want more Watchmen. I don't think I want more Sister Night.
Okay.
I mean, I know she at the end of the final scene, she ate the egg that Dr. Manhattan made, right? That
right.
Supposedly had his power contained within it.
Yeah.
So she ate it, and then we
leave on the cliffhanger of whether or not she did. But I mean, and there's been some interviews even with the writer afterwards. He's like, where he hasn't definitively said, yes, of course she has the powers, but he's like, if you've been watching the series, you know what the logical next step was.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure she has the powers.
Most likely. Yeah. And that's not. I don't want to watch a season
of Dr. Manhattan. No, I don't either.
Like someone that knows everything. Like one episode was enough for me. It was really cool to watch it. But
that would be a really tough series to pull off.
Yeah. Maybe we see something like Looking Glass going on with his life now post hoax.
I would be down for Looking Glass series. I loved him in the show and thought it was really cool. I am glad that the series of Watchmen exists.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, as much as a lot of times going back to, previous work and trying to build off it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
I thought this one worked really well, even though it wasn't like my favorite or I didn't love it. I thought it was really well done, and I think that there's room for more stories in this universe. I don't know that I want them though. Okay. So I think that they're going to have to, really come up. I think that there were a lot of things, especially in that final episode, that got tied up with a neat little bow.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with not returning to it.
Okay.
I have a feeling that HBO is going to order another season because it was very successful and very highly received, both critically and publicly. I think people seem to really enjoy it. So I think we will see more.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure I'll tune in, and I hope I love it. But yeah, overall, again, I liked it. I didn't love it. So what are your overall thoughts? I mean, I know you said you started off by saying you loved it. So
yeah, I mean, I did love it. Coming from someone that read the comics maybe 20 years ago, right? And then I reread it again when maybe the movie came out.
Okay.
I wasn't a fan of the movie. I felt the movie was a bit too long, too drawn out, right?
Sure.
But other than that, it was great. But the series, I enjoyed most of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the tie-ins, because I wasn't so aware of the tie-ins like you were, because the comic's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, I've read the comic I probably read it at least 10 times in the last 10 years. I read it almost I came to it late. I didn't actually read it until the movie was coming out.
Yeah.
Because I had a friend of mine that really loved it, and he's like, "You gotta watch the movie. You gotta read the comic." And I was like, "Okay." And so I read it and I loved it. But I've read it, several times since, probably once a year. I read it right before the series was coming on as well, because I was like, I know it's a sequel to the comic, so I want to read the comic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, having that fresh in my mind maybe affected me a little bit more.
Probably. I mean, yeah. So I didn't pick up on any of those subtle connections that you did, and
sure.
Because of that, I think I probably did enjoy it more.
Yeah. Well, that's been our review. So I guess let's give it a final score out of 10 for the entire season. How would you rate this season of television?
I mean, I would probably give it maybe a 7. I wouldn't recommend it to people that aren't really comic book fans, or action hero movie fans. But if I had a friend that wanted to watch it, I'd probably watch it again with them.
Okay. Well, this is weird because you've been saying that you love it, and I've been saying that I liked it, but I'm going to give it a higher score than you. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was really well made. I think that's what pushes it up. Is I think all of the actors are doing a really good job. The effects are really cool. The directing, the story points at times left me a little bit wanting, but overall I thought it was really well made, and so that's kind of what bumps it up to that 7.5. I agree with you. It's not necessarily something I would recommend to just anyone.
Yeah.
Like you really.
It's too confusing, honestly.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really interested to go back and watch it again, knowing all of the twists and where it's going to end, because I think that's part of the appeal of the comic too. Is rereading it again, you pick up on so many more things. So I'm interested to watch it again and see if I enjoyed it more the second time. But yeah, I thought it was really good. So, anyways, those are our thoughts. So what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and we always want to know here at Get Your Geek On what keeps you geeky, so let us know. But for Robert, I'm Robert. It's been nice to talk to you guys, and have a good one.